We have 13 weeks of pure excitement, pure learning, pure sharing, doing business together, bonding.
Idea extraction is your bedrock to building a profitable business.
Your business has a value, you have worth, and you need to be able to set your price. No matter how great the product is, it has to be marketed. If you have the cure for cancer tomorrow and you don't market it, no lives will be saved. Think about the challenges that we have and why your product or service is going to fill that.
You are the brand. We have to find our own unique value proposition.
At the end of the day, business is about money. And the big question you're always going to get, who is going to pay for this and how much money is it going to actually produce?
The only thing that you need to do is not give up.
This is going to be an exciting ride, ladies. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much, Uju. You know, it's always such a pleasure being here every Tuesday night. I'm very excited to be here. And of course, we have a very special guest tonight, Wendy Suke, my BFF. Someone that I really have a lot of respect for. She walks the talk, and it is always a great session when we have Wendy on. So tonight, Uju asked me to share a little bit about my journey. How did I get here as a businesswoman, Black businesswoman, as a Black boss businesswoman? And so I'm happy to do that. But Uju, for some reason, I can't share my presentation. So I'm going to share it with you. And if you could just pull my presentation up and then we'll just go slide by slide. Is that okay? So I just shared it with you now. So just until Uju brings that up. One of the things we want to do in tonight's session is ask a lot, ask as much as you can. You've recently heard the news about the BBPA's BAIDS program that's been launched. You also are quite familiar with the Federation of African Canadian Economics, and Tiffany Callender, the CEO, has been here. And many of you boss women, business women might have questions around the loan fund and BAIDS, and our executive director, Frances Del Sol, is here as well, and she can answer questions. Today's really is about resources. And when I share with you my story, the resources that has been available to me and the resources that I've taken the advantage of and make the most of those opportunities has gotten me to where I am today. So without a lot of details in terms of, I think, I remember I was at a session and this one woman said, I'm a millionaire, and that's why I can tell you about being a millionaire. And so without disclosing my revenue, I'm going to share my journey and my trajectory to where I am today. And of course, the people that has been on that path with me as well. So once Uju has my presentation up, I will start. Now, the first session that we talked about when I shared my story, for many of the boss women, put your hand up if you remembered my story. Who can tell me here what the Nadine Spencer story is? How old was I when I started in business as an entrepreneur? How many people? Nandi, she knows, 12 years old. Exactly. That's when I became a businesswoman. At the time, I didn't know it yet. I was just trying to enable a future myself. But one of the most significant memory, and I think that's why I'm a businesswoman. I remembered when the 2 50-cent coin landed in the middle of my hand. I remembered what that felt like. Those 2 coins in my hand from selling something, well packaged, delivered to a customer. I think in that moment, the seed was planted. I didn't know that it was called being a businesswoman at the time, but what I felt with those 2 coins in my hand was liberation, freedom, ability, resource. I felt all of that in those 2 coins. That's what it meant to me. And so fast forward many years later, I worked for different corporate companies in Canada and in the United States, but I always went back to being an entrepreneur. And I go back to being an entrepreneur because I like the feeling of those 2 coins in my hand, very much so, and what it meant for my journey. Do you have my how's that going so far, Uju? Almost?
I didn't want to interrupt you. Did you send it to my email or?
I did, yeah, I sent it to your email.
Because I can't see.
I sent a shared, the shared link. I'll send it again.
Okay.
And so in this session, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey and share some of my stories and some of the secrets to my success, if you will. And success can be measured in many different ways. It's not necessarily money. Its success is making a difference in our community. And I think one of the biggest successes that I'm the most proud of is the ability to be a part the future for Black entrepreneurs in this country. You know, today we had a program, the Level Up Masterclass for Financial Literacy at the BBPA. And myself, Francis, and Michael Pinnock, our treasurer, was on. And we just talked to entrepreneurs across the country about what their challenges are, how we at the BBPA can help, and we individually can help. Because, you know, Francis and I, we get the phone calls and we talk to entrepreneurs one-on-one. What is the challenge? One-on-one, we talk to them and hear their stories, and then we look to find a solution for how we can help. And so, you know, that's how I measure success. It's not necessarily because, you know, my income statement, my balance sheet has grown, or I have certain things. It's just the fact that I'm able to make a difference in people's lives. When I talk about the work we do at the BBP as Black entrepreneurs, I can call the entrepreneurs by their name across the country, from Nunavut to Halifax to Edmonton to Toronto to Thunder Bay. We know them one by one. We know each and every one of them. And because we know each and every one of them, we can find solutions for our Black entrepreneurs. So while I'm here trying to get my document shared, I'm going to have Francis Del Sol, our executive director, who I love to call on, to say a few words of welcome. Thanks, Francis.
One of these days, you all the boss women are going to find you somewhere. I'm going to wonder how your body got there. It will be me. So boss women, I'm just putting you on notice. But thank you again for showing up today. Like Nadine, we're always excited when we see you. We talk about you even when you're not in the room. We talk about the fact that every Tuesday we do this program and you show up in record numbers. We talk about the fact that you're inspired by the work that the BBPA does, and how you are joining us in the process of making changing for our generation and the next. And we are the entrepreneurs and we are the business women that history is going to write about. I know some of you are going to leave this project with so much inspiration that you're going to hire. You're going to be a leading business organization in the not too distant future. So we're excited that you continue to join us. We're happy that you're here, and we look forward to seeing you every Tuesday. Thank you.
Fantastic. And, you know, in past sessions, we sort of never seem to have enough time to answer all the questions. And I'm hoping that today we'll be able to answer as many questions as possible. So maybe while we're waiting for my presentation, oh, it's up. Fantastic. Uju, you're awesome. You're the best. Thank you so very much. So, you know, this is the various titles I carry, you know, entrepreneur, philanthropist, advocate, community leader. And so I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about who I am, my bio and my resume, my community involvement, and of course, you know, the audience that I reach, and obviously you all know where to contact me. So to the next slide, please, Uju. So I work in the marketing space. I head a creative agency called Brand EQ, and we've been around for, I think, 8 years working to amplify the voices of not just Black entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs. When we started, it's just to amplify the voice of many entrepreneurs. And, you know, over the past few years, we lean very much into what we call the Black space. And I'm very proud to do that, because what I recognize is that Black entrepreneurs needs their voice represented in a particular way. We need our visuals represented in a particular way. And with that voice and visuals, it has to be seen through not just a cultural lens, but a power lens. You know, one of the stories I like to share is that when photographers take pictures of Black people, if you could just mute Leah for me, would you? If you could just mute Leah for me, thanks. They take pictures of Black individuals with all the biases, unconscious bias, and all of those things that they imagine Black people to be. And so when the photos come out at the end, it has all of them. So you don't see the power shots that you know. And I talked a little bit about that in the last session about, you know, why image is important. But what I find interesting in the world of creative, representation is important. And the reason why I wanted to tell the story for Black entrepreneurs, and especially Black women in a particular way, was that I wanted those power shots. I wanted the world to see that Black women are indeed powerful, strong leaders, and not represent with a bias. And I remember doing an event in the United States I was the first Black woman to participate in this room. There were 2,500 women, and I think only 3 of them looked like me. And I thought I wanted to be able to bring my talent and skill set to the Black community so I could also build us up in every particular way. So that's my leaning into marketing. And then of course I do training, diversity and inclusion training, and I do assessment audits, and of course, communications, which is sharing stories about our community, as I just mentioned. And I formed a business based on just those skills. When I started as a marketer, I remember it being, and it started by chance, because my degree is in political science. I have a degree in political science. I did my honors. I remember when I was writing my paper, I wrote it on foreign policy with United Nations. And at the time, whether, with Iran and Iraq and the United Nations, whether their foreign policy was influenced by by these bodies. And so, how do I get into the space of marketing? I started a business. I started a food business, and the product was great. I made it on the Oprah list. And I remembered I'd paid an agency $1,600. That was like 10, maybe 15 years ago, to design my logo. And I wanted them to do something else, and they were going to charge me $3,400. And I thought, wow, I didn't have the money to do it, actually. So I sat at my kitchen table and I did it myself. And I got the results. I got great results. And that's how essentially I started into the marketing business. But once I got into the marketing business, I kept thinking about, how can I make it better? How could I make the stories better? How could I make the products better? How could I make the design better? The elements that we bring to even website design, we don't just design a website. We create stories. We think about, who is this going to impact? And so that's how we build a unique value proposition at the agency. So if we could go on to the next slide now, Uju. And so whenever I hear my bio read, I'm always very surprised sometimes, because I go back to being that 12-year-old girl with the challenges, that was happening in my life at the age of 12. And I think, wow, who is this woman that, that they describe? But sometimes, you have to be all of these things, as you are a leader, you're a businesswoman, you manage your finances, and also you give back to community. And so, my daughter calls me a multi-hyphenate, because, I manage and I do all these things in the world of, as you know, I'm head of Brandy Q. I'm the president of the BBPA. I sit on numerous boards. So if we could go on to the next slide, would you? Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so president of the BBPA. In this space, Francis and I were on the board when we first started serving. And, Francis was always the person I could lean on whenever there were challenges. I would always call her in the middle of the night. She would be on vacation and I'd call her. And, one of the things I learned in terms of this space is that we have to broaden our networking. We have to broaden our skills. We have to broaden our reach, actually, our reach to different individuals. I remembered we were having a program at the BBPA. It was International Women's Month, and we didn't have any funds for not much. We barely had enough to carry the program. And I sent Wendy Suki an email, and in the subject line, it says, help from a friend. And then she wrote back, it was like, I think Friday evening, and she wrote back immediately. And she says, how can I help? And I wrote back to her and I said, this is the challenge we're having, is there any way you can help? And you know what? She said, yes. So one of the things that I believe in business that has driven me and that will never stop is the ability to always ask, no matter what and no matter when. My daughter, Danielle, I don't know if she's on, but you've met her many times. She always said, Mom, the thing I admire about you the most is that you're never afraid to ask, no matter, it could be in the 9th hour, you're never afraid to ask. So my whole analogy about asking in business comes from Grey's Anatomy. So I don't know how many of you watch Grey's Anatomy. Put your hand up. Let me see who watches Grey's Anatomy. So there's, I can't see. Ujur, is a lot of people bring, oh yes, Cassandra, I see you. I see you, Grey's Anatomy fan. Beverly, I see you. Gisela, I see you're a Grey's Anatomy fan. So I'm watching this episode on Grey's Anatomy. And there's an ambulance that brings in a person who's 98% dead on this gurney. So Meredith Grey says to the intern, work on this body. He says, Dr. Grey, the body is pretty much dead. She goes, you keep working on that body. An hour later, he's still trying to resuscitate the body. 2 hours later, she comes back. She says, you keep working. So finally, at the end of the day, she comes back and he's still working on the body. And she said, you can stop now, which he did. And he says, why did you keep have me working on the body the entire time? You knew that when this patient came in, like they were dead. She said, this is because when you tell the family that the patient is dead, you will have told them you've done everything you can, and that will be true. And, I take that away in business. When I'm working on a project, when my team's working on a project, I share the same story. We need to do everything we can. So when the day is done, if it didn't work or something didn't happen, we can say we've done everything we can. And so 2 weeks when we were launching Bades, we were launching Bades, we were putting everything together, and I didn't get a politician in the room. When you're launching a program, you want a politician to say, hey, just to give a few words and to, bless the event. And I remember reaching out in the 9th hour, and I emailed Greg Fergus. It was on the day of the event, the actual day of the event. Can you imagine? But I asked him anyway. And he showed up. Not only did he show up, he said a few words. And that was just incredible. So as business owners, one of the things that I've done, and one of the things that you need to do, that we need to continually do, is keep working on that body till the 9th hour. Never stop, never stop. And that's one of the things that has gotten me to where I am in business, because I'm never afraid to ask, and I never give up, even if it's in the 9th hour. Can I have the next slide, please, Uju? And so being in the room, so important. It's so important to be in the room. And you know what? For many of us, sometimes we're in the room and we're not even sure if one of the things, I think a lot of people gets challenged with is the imposter syndrome. We get the imposter syndrome. And you know what? I get it sometimes. I still do. I'm in a space, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? Well, you know how you got here, because you're brilliant, you're smart, you deserve to be here, first of all, and you have what it takes. And I find, as a Black business owner, as a Black woman, when you're in that room, it's because they cannot deny you being in that room. Absolutely not. Again, I remember I was with an organization, and in this 90-year-old organization, many of the leaders were always white women. And so they had this one spot. It was a very prized position that was always for white women. Until this day, it's another Black woman has not gotten it. And I remembered when I was new in the organization, one woman who became my sponsor, that's why I believe in sponsorship so much. She said, Nadine, I'm going to put your resume in for this position, because your resume is so strong. They will have to tell us why you didn't get the position if when we put it in. And so said, so done, I did get the position. But we always want to make sure that we at least push to be in the room, because it is only then that we will learn the nuances and all of those skill sets that we need to advance. They say we at RARSA and at WEC, there's a campaign, the See It, Be It campaign. Many of us may not be in the room, but for the few of us that are in the room, it's important that we as Black business owners, as Black leaders, see each other and see women in the room, at the table, and really making a difference. And one of the things that I believe in, I truly believe in, is that when we're in the space, don't get in that room and close that door behind you. We cannot do that. When we're in the room, we have to look at how we can bring others in. It is really critical, it's really important that when we get into those spaces, it's not just for the one Black woman. It's not, it really isn't. And when we're in that room, we have to ask, why aren't others in this space? And we have to be very intentional about it, very, very intentional. And one of the things we can't do, sometimes I'm in those spaces and, you're the only one, I'm the only one talking about, the Black lens. We will have a conversation and no one has thought about what true representation is. What is the language that we're using? The language that we're using for recruitment. How are we going to bring others in if the language of recruitment, the language of openness, of inclusivity is not a part of that? And then once we get into the room, how are we ensuring that we are well balanced and well adjusted, and really more than tolerating the individuals in that room, the diverse individuals, but really making space for diverse individuals to be in the room and at the table. So that's one of the things, in my business that I've done. I remembered once I went to Texas and I heard that John Mackey from Whole Foods was going to be there speaking. And because, everybody wants to get into Whole Foods. And at the time I had a product that had made the Oprah list and that I wanted to get into Whole Foods. And so I bought my ticket, I flew to Texas, and I looked in the room and the room was full. There was not one seat left, but I looked up at the front and there was a whole row on the of seats empty on the front. And so I stood up And if I had a door, so at some point when we can get together, I'll show you my power move, how I walk into a room. And it's really important. I learned that a long time ago. You know how I learned that? Because my husband, who's a white male, was having like fantastic training at Nesbitt Burns, and they taught these men how to enter a room. And so he was telling me about this, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So I framed up myself, and I walked into that room all powerful. And you know what I did? I wrote to the, I walked to the very front row, and I sat down. And guess who sat beside me? John McKay. I said, hi, John. Nice to meet you. I'm Nadine Spencer. Blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, I got on the Whole Foods Advisory Board. But, you know, we can't be afraid. We have to be in the room. We have to take up space and go to the front, sit at the front. It is totally okay to be at the front. Never imagine that we're going to sit at the back. That's one of the things that I did. And then my product got into Whole Foods, and, you know, the rest is history. Next slide, Uju. I hope I'm not taking up, so I talked about being at the table, so we can go to the next slide. Yes, and of course, community involvement. One of the things that I've done over the years, I can't remember a time when I was never involved in community. And as a business owner, we might say we don't have enough time, we just, you know, and we are stretched. We don't have enough time, we are stressed and stretched. But one of the best resources I found is in terms of networking, is participating in different organizations. So Jamaica 50 celebrations, I remember doing the communications there, pro bono, I gave of myself gratis. Scarborough Women's Center, I participated on the York University Scholarship and Bridal Awards Committee. I'm on the Board of Governors at York University. And then of course, the role that to me, it just means so much, the Black Business and Professional Association. When I got my BBPA Harry Drum Awards in 2016 with Wendy Soutier, it meant a lot to me, because I go back to being that 12-year-old girl and how it is here that I am getting this BBPA Harry Drum Awards for business, which is very important. And then I thought, I'm going to give back to this organization. When I first came to the BBPA after 2016, I remember, you know, getting the award thinking that the story should be told on how these Black leaders were so accomplished. And there wasn't much press involved in wanting to write the stories for Black leaders that was achieving. And I remembered in my work, I did a press conference on I was running an anti-gun violence campaign and did a press conference. And when we got there, every media house was there. The place was full. So I recognized that the media wants to hear about stories, negative stories about Black people. But when we had all these leaders, like what was given a Harry Drum Award, there was no representation. And so I asked Pauline at the time, the immediate past president, that I would volunteer. And I came on board and I did the PR for Harry Jerome. And that year, again, we had an increase in media, but not to the point of where it should be. But community involvement is important, because as you're expanding your network, how do you meet people? You meet people through community involvement. And if you can go to the next slide, would you? Yeah, and we can advance through all that. And of course, you know, when we get the awards, when I get the awards, and I've been blessed, really blessed to be recognized with a lot of different awards. But what I use them for is just to be that beacon, because I think about all the little 12-year-old girls and the 25 and various ages that needs that inspiration. And so I hold those symbols up to the underserved to show that, you know what, you too can make it. If you are educated, if you build your network, which will build your net worth, and you never stop, you just continue going, that it is indeed possible. If it's possible for a Nadine Spencer, it very much is possible for you. And we'll go to the next slide, would you? And we can go to the next one as well. Yeah, so my number one philosophy, my mother has 14 children. I'm lucky number 13 of 14 children. And my mother had this way, she always went around telling people that she loved them. I hated it. Oh my gosh, every time she did it, I was so embarrassed. But I realized that, you know, and my mother said that, Nadine, if there's one thing you have to give is love, it's okay. You can make people feel great, because people matter. And if it's love you have to give, then you should give it. And you shouldn't be embarrassed about telling people that you love them. And so I embrace the people matter, because when we create a campaign, we always think about, who is this for? We don't just create things random. When we do a website, when we do a graphic, we think about people matter. We think about who is it for, what is it, and what do we want to get from that one person. So I'll share an example. We, in partnership with Ryerson and WEC, we did the Rise Up pitch competition, and we did a study, which I've shared with you all, one of the largest studies on Black women, about Black women entrepreneurs across the country. And I remembered when we were doing the campaign, we sort of presented the first image, and it was this image that was, you know, it was a woman, and we sort of had conversations around what the image should look like. And so some people said, oh, it should be a caricature. Some people said we should have no image. And I said, no, no, no. We are representing Black women across the country who are not represented. We're not represented at all. You know, Wendy will share the numbers, you know, so many, it's the small numbers are on boards, the small number have access, the small number are in the C-suite, we have such a small representation. So when we have an opportunity to represent ourselves, we really should put ourselves in the picture. And so we chose a very strong image that I think transcends many different Black women, but every Black woman can see themselves in that. But when we come to the table, we have to be okay and be open to represent ourselves and represent each other. And when we're creating campaigns, we have to do that. So that's one of the things that I got from my mother, was that when you're doing something, Nadine, you have to think about your people. So if you think about your people, for example, J-Cell, if you think about who your target audience is, who you're serving, you will be able to imagine and get to the root of what's going to solve their pain points, what's going to solve their problems. But if it's randomly done, we're not going to be able to imagine what their pain points are. We're not going to be able to solve, we're not going to be able to make a difference, and our business is not going to grow because of that. So those are some of the things that at the agency we do. I continue to do that, not just with the agency, with the partnerships that I develop and with the organizations that I volunteer at. I believe that through marketing, you can solve a lot of challenges, because if you're doing good work and nobody hears about it, if you have a great service and nobody hears about it, you're not intentional about telling that story, then it really doesn't work. We'll have fallen flat. And what we want to do is to be able to stand up, stand proud, and be confident in the work that we're doing, and know that we're serving, whether it's our community, ourselves, or our family. But also, we want to be able to champion that in a very confident way. I think I'm at the end of my slide. Thank you. And if you could, yeah, so we can exit that. And if there's any questions, I think I've got time for questions, Uju. So that's my story, and I continue to forge and form great relationships and great partnerships. I mean, I've got 100 stories, as you can imagine. I think the last one I'll share is last year, or was it a year and a half ago, Fran, when we were pushing at the table. We did the survey on Black entrepreneurs, and we recognized there was a huge gap for Black business owners. I collectively say we, because I think my story is your story and your story is my story. We did not qualify for the various stimuluses that the government offered. And why didn't we qualify? Because our paperwork wasn't done. We didn't have the taxes filed. We didn't have the finances. And, you know, when I thought about it, I thought, no one should get left behind in this era. No Black person should get left behind. And then, of course, the Prime Minister, in his announcement in September, when he talked about, when he announced the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Program, and the 3 areas of it, which is the loan fund, the ecosystem fund, which will provide a wraparound supports through different organizations, and of course, the Knowledge Hub, which is there to measure, to collect data and look at what the challenges are for the Black community, and then how are we going to solve those. But one of the things the Prime Minister said is that we've acknowledged that anti-Black racism does play a part in the advancement and success of Black entrepreneurs. Lack of access plays a part, and we, the government, wants to do something to solve that. And so Francis and I, the board and I, we had many conversations about how we would be at that table, and we advocated and we pushed, and we never stopped pushing. I tell you, hours, nights on end. Francis and I will be up talking. Michael and I will be up talking. Ross and I will be up talking. The board really, really cares. I reach out to people. If I didn't know how to do something, Wendy's the person. I say, Wendy, how can I do this? What can we do differently? How should we advance this? And so I've developed a robust group of people who will just hear me talk, hear me ask about what is the best way to move ahead, to advance. When we had the Rise Up pitch competition, can you imagine 700 women that look like me and you from across the country participated in this pitch, participated in this study, and we authentically shared where the challenges were, where we needed the help, and how to position our, looking for solutions on how to position our companies, where to get the resources. That's tonight's session. It's a huge part of it. Over the past, I'm 53 years old. Hard to tell, right? Many resources has played a huge part in my business. Just resources, whether it's people resources, because they've pointed me to the right direction, and then finding those resources. One of the challenges I have online is that I would really, my goal before I leave this role, and as I leave this role as president, what I hope to continue to do is having the resources by the government set in a way that everybody can understand it. Everybody can understand easily how to get the information. You know, you get to the page and you've got to navigate to 10 different buttons. And if you're really not that quick on web or IT management, you're not able to get the information. We should be able to get the information. One of the things that I see in government is that as we're talking to our audience, we don't necessarily understand that, you know what, some people don't have access to technology. The research found that. And so how do we then cast our net wide and get everybody included in the opportunity that should be available for us? And as I say, it's not just for Black people or Black women, it's good for all of Canada. It's good for us as a society as we look to build and grow and really look out for the other human being. I say the things that I want for myself and my children is what I want for you, and your children is what I want for you and your business. And that has been part of my business story. And you know what? I'm not afraid to take a risk. I'm a huge risk taker. I'll tell you that. I'm a very big risk taker. I'll be the one that runs out there and I'll figure it out when I get there. And I think the last story I will tell, Uju, you're probably waiting for me to stop, but I was given an opportunity to do a communication strategy in Honduras. And you know how I got that communication strategy? One of the gentlemen that I sat beside in that Whole Foods meeting, he was so impressed with me. He sent me a newsletter that he had done. When he sent the newsletter, I said, listen, my friend, this newsletter is not going to get you what you think you're looking for. It's actually awful, but I will design it for you for free. So for free, I designed the most fabulous newsletter. He could not believe that this newsletter was done for their organization and for free. And so they then saw my profile and asked me if I want to participate in this project for economic opportunity in Honduras, put on by the Conscious Capitalism Group. And I said, absolutely yes. Listen, I speak no Spanish. I'd never done a comm strategy for anyone in Honduras, not even outside in that region. And I said yes. So I get to Honduras, they send a driver to pick me up. I get to the hotel and I did my magic and they loved it. And then they invited me back again. And again, I went to the parliament and I had a press conference, Associated Press, all these people were there. I was speaking in English and a translator was translating in Spanish. And again, I wasn't afraid. I mean, I was afraid, but I did it anyway. Then I came back to Canada and we were talking about the plan and they said, what will you do with a $25 million marketing budget? And I did a little happy dance all around the kitchen where I was. And I took that project. Not having a project to that size, but I built a team. It was absolutely phenomenal and I did it. So do it afraid. It's not that, you know, I've been given these great things and so forth, but I'm not afraid to do it afraid. And I remembered I called a woman up because I wanted her to give me some media training before I went to Honduras. And she didn't show up. Like, you know, I was going to pay her $800 an hour. Can you imagine? And she didn't show up because I'd asked her one question and she was afraid to show up. She was afraid. Not me. I will never not show up because I'm afraid. And so I think, you know, those are the skills and those are the things that have taken me through this journey. And it's not over yet. We've got lots more to do as we continue to build and grow. So if you've got any questions,
Yes.
you can let me know. That is my story.
Thank you so much, Nadine. I feel like just in that story, there's a lot of gems and lessons, that and we hear and entrepreneurs can take away. And I particularly wanted to ask a question, especially on behalf of service providers, because, and if you don't have a product but you have a service as your business, please raise your hand here as well, just so that we know. We have quite a number of them, and the question here is, how are you able to strongly and consistently position your service, knowing that it's not something tangible, it's not something that is as easily marketable as a tangible product? What are these steps you took to leverage government supports or increase network, especially as a service provider? And we have quite a number of service providers here.
Great question. One of the things I talked about last week was that you have to become the brand. And I remember the first time someone told me that, I was afraid. I was afraid to put my name and my face on the company and really step out. I was just afraid, all the baggage that you bring to the table, all the things you've heard, all the negative things, you can't do it, all the things teachers have told me, that came to the surface. But I thought to myself, if not now, when? And I just thought that I'm here to make a difference. And I thought I was going to do it even though I was afraid. And so I did it afraid, and I put myself out there. I created my persona and my personality that you see. It's who I am. I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to have lettuce in my teeth. I'm not afraid to fall. I'm a clumsy person. I'll be the one walking and I will fall, but I will get back up. I will get back up. And I sing. And you know why I sing? If you all remember at Harry Jerome, when I have that mic, I will sing a song, badly as I do. But what it does, it shows me that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. And, I remembered I lived in Flemington Park, and I don't know how many of you know what Flemington Park is, but when my mother came to Canada, she lost all her money and we had to move to public housing. Back then they called it Ontario housing. And it was an awful feeling for me, because when I was in Jamaica, I remembered going to the school with Christopher Siaga, who was a prime minister's son. So here it is, I leave Jamaica and I'm like driven to school. I'm, go to the same school as the prime minister's kid. And I come to Canada and I'm in public housing. That really can take a toll on one's psyche and what you believe in yourself and your self-worth. But I decided to shake off all that. And I decided that I was going to love myself and know that I have value. And I put that out there. And as you hear, I'm not afraid to share my story. That is the thing. I'm not afraid to share my story. You have to come up with a story. You have to be authentic and true to yourself and your service. When people recognize that, they will latch on. They will find some bit about you that will resonate with them and connect with them. And they will forge a bond in terms of business and partnership, and it will go. Because what happened with my friend in Honduras was I just told him my story. I said, you know what, listen, I was like on the street at 12 years old. My mother went to Canada. She didn't know I was in this bad situation, and I had to find a way for myself. And the Conscious Capitalism Group loved and champions entrepreneurs. And so they just embraced me. And that really changed the trajectory of my business, really in a major way. I was not afraid to say the truth about who I am and put myself out there. And that enables my business. And so, as I mentioned last week, it's not just you want to tell your story in an authentic way. You want to reflect your brand. You really want to reflect your brand in an authentic way. So that starts with your photos. It starts to how you frame up, how you look when you're on these Zoom sessions. You wouldn't believe the amount of opportunities that I get when I get invited a lot. God bless Wendy to speak, and then someone else invites me to speak. And you know what? Because when I show up, I always represent. Wendy, tell them maybe not. I'm not afraid. I prepare myself. I frame up, and I look the part. And so people want to assimilate with people who look the part, who are representing their brand in a true, authentic way. And they feel that, you know what, I can do business with this person. So you want to imagine that when someone sees your profile online, when they see you show up in these Zoom sessions, that they say, I can do business with this person, or I can refer this person to someone else. That's really what we're looking for.
Amazing. Thank you. One more question, and then we will go to the next segment. And this is around, you mentioned walking into a room and learning how to occupy space. And someone was asking if there was a book or a course that you would suggest to hone those skills.
I'm going to put a course on about that. It's going to be called, it's going to be called Framing Up, right? For how we frame up in the door. I don't know of a book offhand. That's a great question. And if I find one, I will let you know. But it's that confidence in a room. So there's an article, and maybe I'll share it. It's called The Imposter Syndrome, and it talks a lot about why we have that imposter syndrome and what we can do about it. But, you know, all of this is like using a muscle. You do it once, it's tough. The second time, you know, maybe still tough, you know, but eventually, I promise you this, on the 100th time you do it, it'll be bang on. Malcolm Gladwell in his book, he says it takes 10,000 hours. Some of you may not have 10,000 hours, but every opportunity you get. I remembered winning the Dale Carnegie's highest achievement award for public speaking. I was 21 years old at the time. And I remembered back at the time when I took the Dale Carnegie course, when I was 21, the course was $700. So you can imagine $700 how many years ago when I was 21, I'm 53 now. That was a lot of money, but I invested in myself. And so it's important that you continue to invest in yourself. But what you need, what we need to do, and I continually do that, is that you have to show up. Whenever someone invites you to speak, just say yes. And if someone's not inviting you to speak, just volunteer anyway. When I put it in the chat, we need a speaker, you should all be saying, let's speak, because that's where it starts, bit by bit by bit. The moment you confront what you're afraid of, confront what's difficult, it just gets easier each and every time.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Nadine. And what we're taking away is especially, and this doesn't just apply to businesses that have a service, but even products as well, to really show up and to look the part and, you know, just represent your brand like you were representing yourself, right? Because it's literally part of you. Thank you so much, Nadine. And at this moment, we would give extra time at the end to answer any other questions that, you know, that comes up. But at this moment, we're just going to invite our next speaker, Wendy Sukie. And I'm going to share my screen while I let you know how much of an amazing facilitator she is, an amazing person that she is. So she is the professor of entrepreneurship and strategy and the academic director of the Diversity Institute at Ted Rogers School of Management, Rising University. She's one of Canada's leading experts in disruptive technologies, innovation processes, and diversity inclusion. The Diversity Institute works with partners on projects aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion in leadership and entrepreneurship. She leads the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub that's funded by the Government of Canada, which promotes inclusive supports for women and other diverse entrepreneurs. And she has helped create and grow several successful startups and social ventures, including Flybits, Enterthing, and Growing North. She's received many awards for her work advancing diversity and inclusion, including Meritorious Service Cross, one of Canada's highest civilian honors. And she's also been recognized with the Harry Jerome Diversity Award, the 2019 SATA Alliance Sarah Kirk Award, and many more. She has an MBA, an MA, and PhD in management science and 2 honorary doctorates. Please join me in welcoming our dear friend and also sponsor here at Boss Women, Professor Wendy Sukie. Wendy, the Boss Women stage is yours.
Thanks so much. And it's horrible to have to follow Nadine because she's so much more interesting and engaging than I am. But, you know, I could listen to her all night because, you know, she really walks the talk. And I think that her insights into what it takes to be successful are just right on. You know, all of us have stories, but I think hers is really quite remarkable. And what she has done for the community with, you know, bringing together Black business organizations from across the country to present a united front in fighting for real resources to invest in Black entrepreneurs is transformational. Like I really do believe that there's a moment in time when you look at the history of civil rights or economic development or change generally. It's not a straight line. It's more like this. And I think we're really at an inflection point right now for the Black community, and particularly for Black entrepreneurs to get the support that they need and really grow. So, you know, I always feel very lucky to be invited to these Boss Women events. And I have to say that, you know, some of you I think have been here a couple of times before, and it's sort of embarrassing because I only have a couple of stories to tell. But what I was asked to do this evening was really provide high level, and it's really going to be high level, a high level perspective on some of the work we're doing at the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, as well as some of the opportunities for financing, because and Nadine can certainly dig in deeper on some of the new funds that are specifically targeting Black women entrepreneurs, but there's money out there. It's just, as she said, often trying to figure out how to navigate the processes, but also understanding the conventions and the expectations around application processes and so on. So I'll try to kind of provide you with a high level. I'll put my contact information in the chat box. The Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub has a whole bunch of people who are really expert in different things, and definitely happy to help. So it's not, my visit tonight is not sort of one and done, because we really view your success as partly our success. What I'm going to propose to do is to try to share my screen. Always a challenge, because no matter how many Zoom calls I'm on, I always seem to mess it up. But let's see if this works. Does this work?
Yes, we can see it.
And Uju, can you just remind me how long I have to speak? Because I'm a professor. We talk for 3 hours and then get rest and don't breathe in between. So I want to make sure that I stick to my time.
Yes, you have 35 minutes, and then we'll do question and answer afterwards.
Okay, great. So I'll provide sort of high level. I've sent a PDF of this so that if you don't have to take notes or anything, you can get a copy of it. And if you go to the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub website, you can also get access to more information. The thing that I think is clear, though, you know, the more we do research, the more we understand that often people, and Nadine sort of pointed to this, often people just need help, right? That of course, all the information's there. Of course, there are all these websites. Of course, there are all these forms you can fill in, but sometimes you just need someone to kind of take you by the hand and guide you through it. In my experience, I was the Vice President of Research and Innovation for a few years. My experience is the first grant application or funding application you do is the toughest. The second one is easier. And by the time you've done a few of them, it just becomes kind of cut and paste and pro forma. And Nadine's certainly been party to a number of proposals that we've put together. Often you do need to have some expertise in order to access the funding. You do need to know what they're looking for. You do need to know how to position yourself and your business in a way that fits with the criteria that people are looking for. So that's, you know, I think that's something that as part of the work that BPPA is leading, I think there's some real opportunities to help people gain the confidence and the knowledge to navigate some of these systems. So just talk, I'll try to talk briefly about some of the stuff that we know, some of the resources that are available. My office gave me like, I don't know, 100 slides. There's no way I'll get through it all, but I'm more than happy to, you know, take questions at the end of the presentation, but more importantly, have you follow up if there's specific stuff that we can do. So we've been doing research, and what is important about this, is that a lot of government programs are targeting small, medium enterprises with employees, which is about 16% of those are owned by women. But we know that 37% of self-employed women, 37% of people who are self-employed in Canada are women. It's a difference between 114,000 majority-owned small, medium enterprises and over 1 million solopreneurs or self-employed women. Why is that important? Because a lot of the programs designed by government have tended to favor small, medium enterprises rather than women who are self-employed. And so one of the things that people should be thinking about is, do I incorporate? And, you know, it's funny because I've been a consultant since before Nadine was born. 1980, how many years ago is that? 40 years? Yeah, 40 years ago, I got my first consulting contract. So for 40 years, I've been a consultant. I've always been self-employed. This year, in 2020, I incorporated my business after working for 40 years as an entrepreneur. Why? Because I realized I could actually do it really cheaply, and because once I incorporated, suddenly I become eligible for a whole bunch of other stuff. So thinking, it's not free, and it also comes with obligations, right? If you incorporate your business, you have to file tax returns. There's stuff you have to do. But a lot of women find that a real barrier to moving forward. And so, you know, again, one of the things that I hope Boss Women will talk about are pros and cons of incorporating and, you know, getting some support for women who want to move in that direction. We also know that women generally have very different experiences. They tend to be more focused in services and they have trouble getting financing. We know that the absence of role models, and Nadine talked about this specifically for Black women, but it applies to women generally, is really a problem. You do a search on entrepreneur, you get Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, mostly men who have left their wives, I would like to say, mostly white, mostly tech, mostly American. You don't get Oprah Winfrey, you don't get Kylie Jenner, who was a billionaire at the age of 20, and you don't get images of women that look like me or even women who look like you. So there's some real fundamental biases that are built into the system that shape how women get access to resources. And we're really focusing on this both from a research perspective, also from a services perspective. How can we take what we know from the research and translate that into services that will support women? And Nadine mentioned the Rise Up competition, which was phenomenal. Like we had worked with the Bank of Montreal. The Bank of Montreal had a competition, $100,000, $10,000 prizes. They got 1,000 women from across the country, all kinds of women. BPPA and other organizations organized Rise Up. 700 Black women applied. Why this was important was not just because it showed that BPPA and its partners could really rally and organize women, but it also showed, in my view, the real need for funding and especially microfinancing. And we're pushing really, really hard. There's been some movement on this, but historically it's been there are a lot more people who will lend you $100,000 then we'll give you $5,000, even though we know a lot of businesses just need $5,000 to get started or to survive. And so, you know, we pulled a lot of that data out of the stories of the women who applied for the Rise Up competition. And I'm pleased to say that that data, that evidence, which validated the experience of many Black women by putting numbers and percentages against the issues, I think helped encourage the government to rethink some of its programs. You know, I was in a meeting, I don't know if any of you know Janice Bartley, she runs Foodpreneur, and we were in a meeting with Agriculture Canada, and Agriculture Canada was saying, you know, we just ran this competition, and you know, we really wanted diverse people to apply. We really wanted women to apply, but nobody did. Their competition was for $1 million. And Janice said, like, we're not going to apply for $1 million. We look at that and we say it's not for us. You know, what you need to do is take your money and break it into smaller pots, because you get people into the process, they develop confidence, and over time they may be ready to apply for the $1 million. So there's a lot of issues, I would argue, in terms of the ways in which programs are designed. And again, Nadine talked about the impact of COVID on entrepreneurs generally, on women specifically, and on Black women in particular, and really showed that the effects are not even. And she's done some amazing research that was, I think, really transformational. I mean, she talks about you know, being sort of relentless and going to government and pushing and pushing and pushing. But again, having evidence, I think, really helped. And this, for me, I use this all the time. This was the BPA study that looked at respondents from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which represents a lot of SMEs across the country, and then did the same survey on BPPA members and asked questions like, you know, are you worried that you cannot pay your April bills? 30% of the CFIB people said, I'm worried I cannot pay my April bills. 80% of the BPPA members said they could not pay their April bills. Worried about permanent closure, 39% of CFIB, compared to 85% of the respondents to BPPA. And yet when asked the question, do you have the capacity to take on more debt? 56% of CFIB members said they didn't, whereas 96% of BPPA members said they did not have the capacity to take on more debt. So what Nadine was able to do, and what we were able to reinforce, is that Black entrepreneurs were hit twice as hard by COVID and had half as much access to the supports that were being made available, because the supports were not designed for them. So this is an example where I think research becomes really important in shaping programs. And there are a lot of resources that are available to help small businesses, not specifically targeting Black women, but supports that are available to help, for example, write your business plan. Lots of different versions, whether it's from Futurepreneur or BDC. How to develop your sales and marketing plans, Futurepreneur, how to deal with social media, and so on. This is a process of continuous learning. So while Boss Women will provide you with some basics and some skills and some tools, you can't stop there. You've got to continue to develop your skills. And I hate to say it because a lot of entrepreneurs hate to write, but making sure that you've got a business plan, making sure that you run the numbers, making sure that you know who is going to pay for your service, how much they're going to pay, and what revenue you're going to generate. Those things become super, super, super important. And often finances are one of the barriers that entrepreneurs face generally, and women in particular. And I love the fact that BPPA is running basically a Saturday morning course in financial literacy to help move this forward. There are other tools, you know, how to do your cash flow. Like, really, businesses are about the money. You have to be able to project your cash flow. There are courses online about how to be a more effective leader, how to build your team, how to do just about anything. And we can provide you with links and so on for those of you who are interested. So I'm not going to go through this in detail than to say there are lots of resources. You can ask for help, but there's also self-paced things that you can teach yourself to do. So when we come to funding, the same thing is true. You know, most of you are not in industries or at the stage where you're going to attract venture capitalists. There may be some. You know, we were approached recently by a social finance bazillionaire with a shady past, but you know, he has money, who said that he wanted to get into social finance and he's looking for opportunities to invest in underrepresented organizations. I think in the last day or so, Walmart has just announced that it's going to invest heavily in creating opportunities for diverse entrepreneurs. Nadine's already been working with, you know, Loblaws and Sobeys and Starbucks, pushing hard to find access to shelf space and funding. So there are a lot of different ways to get money in the door. But here are some of the things that people can look for in the early stages. Like obviously you can rely on your families and friends. Crowdfunding, there are some very specific programs like SheEO, designed for women by women, where you pitch, and if you get picked, you get a $50,000 free interest-free loan. But more importantly, you get a network and a community of very well-connected people to help move you forward. You can join incubators. We run a couple, one with Scatting Court, which provides a whole range of wraparound services. And if you're in the food business, it also provides an opportunity to test market products and so on. Scatting Court has Market 707 and links to the Daniels Food Network or Development Network. So there are incubators and other programs like Boss Women that you can plug into. There are government grants. The government grants that are floating around right now range from, you know, $5,000 in COVID relief to combinations of loans and grants where you get a $40,000 loan and a $10,000 grant. You know, I was saying to everybody, like, apply, get the money, put the $40,000 in an account, pay it back in 6 months and keep the 10K. Like, how is that not a good idea if you can qualify? A lot of women are very reluctant to borrow money and unfortunately rely on their credit cards, for example, to finance their businesses. One of the fundamental principles of growing a business is to use other people's money. So if you can qualify for loans, and right now interest rates are very low and should be low, it makes way more sense to use other people's money rather than your hard-earned cash. There are lots and lots of government grants, but finding them is always a challenge. And as I said, when we look at things like angel investors or venture capitalists, those are really aimed at kind of the higher end of the spectrum. We're pushing really hard to get smaller amounts of money because we know that they can be transformative. And so there's like, I've sent this through to Fran and Uju and Nadine to share with you, so I don't have to go through it in great detail. But the main thing is there is money out there. It's just that you have to find the right kind of funding for the stage of business that you're currently in. And you know, there were a lot of people complaining that some of the funding through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy didn't go to enough racialized women entrepreneurs. But you have to make sure that the grant fits with your business. If your annual income is $100,000, you're probably not going to get $100,000 grant. You might, but it's a longer shot than aiming a bit lower. On the other hand, you know, if you have big revenues on an annual basis, you should be trying to leverage that to get more and more and more funding. So really trying to navigate this stuff is hugely important. And, you know, this is just big, long lists. We also know that women tend, and especially Black women, tend not to go to their banks. I would argue that regardless of what your experiences have been with big institutions, you need a relationship with the bank. And it could be, you know, the Business Development Bank of Canada, which specializes in entrepreneurs. It could be a credit union like Alterna, which is a fabulous institution that is specializing in microgrants. But you have to build that credit rating, and you have to be prepared to navigate those waters in order to build your business. Yeah, I've already talked about the incorporation business, and something that you should continue to consider. And I'm not going to go through this because there's just tons and tons and tons of stuff that we've pulled together. I do want to encourage you all to visit the WEC website, and it's you know, wekh.ca, and to think about, for example, joining our Ask Give platform. You know, as Nadine said, a lot of women are reluctant to ask for what they want. It's important to recognize that if you don't ask, you don't get. And the worst thing that someone can say is no. So we developed this sharing platform where you can go on and you can say, you know, I want to export hot sauce to the Ukraine. Has anybody done that? Do they know how to navigate those processes? And someone may say yes, and worst thing that'll happen is nobody shows up. So we've been doing a lot of work. One of the things I want to mention is there are opportunities to, right now, especially if you have $2,500, and I know for some organizations that's a lot, but if you have $2,500, you can hire a graduate student for 4 months. $2,500 becomes $10,000 to hire students with some of the government programs that are around. And I'm a big believer in harnessing the expertise of youth, because a lot of young people can build websites and set up social media strategies in their sleep. You get a good business student, they can help you, you know, modernize your technology infrastructure and figure out how to use, you know, good accounting software. There are programs like Digital Main Street, which the City of Toronto offers, which will give you free access to young people to help build your technology opportunities. I have to pitch Study Buddy because it's my most favorite little off the side of my desk program. So we developed this with the Lifelong Leadership Institute, which is led by Trevor Massey. Some of you may know, and the Jean Augustine Center. And we just, Trevor got funding this summer, and we're going to be launching again in July. It's free online tutoring for Black students and their families. And so we know that COVID has had a devastating impact on businesses, but even a bigger impact on women who are trying to juggle homeschooling and other things. And we don't want any kids left behind. So just a little plug for my Study Buddy program. The Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, we is waiting to hear what is going to happen on this one. And fingers crossed, this is a proposal that BPPA and the Diversity Institute are pitching to the federal government. There are also tons, like I have to say, tons and tons and tons of free resources, but also specialized grants that you can apply for. BDC has lots of really good advice, and, you know, take advantage of other people's time and expertise, because the government, BPPA, Futurepreneur, many of these organizations have resources that are there to help you. They have toolkits, they have specialized funds. There's, you know, the last budget just announced specialized funds to help businesses introduce technology, money to support tech companies, money to help other companies buy technology and implement technology. You know, the banks all say they want to help. The accelerators and incubators all provide a variety of resources. I already mentioned that we run some programs, and, you know, there's lots of stuff out there. It's just sometimes finding the right combination of things to meet your needs. Are you interested in exporting? One of the things that's happened with COVID is that people realize, and we found this in one of the respondents for one of the competitions we were involved in. Before COVID, she was in 6 local stores. After COVID, she was in 60 stores across North America, because once she went online, she could sell, I can't remember what it was, but some consumer product anywhere in North America. And there's lots of support right now through Export Development Canada to help organizations export. And you can get up to $30,000 to become export ready. What does that mean? Well, I would argue that means you have a plan, you have an idea of where you want to export to, and one of our big wins was Export Canada saying that they recognize that implementing technology is part of the process of getting ready to export. You know, some of these are more relevant for organizations that are more developed. Some are relevant for organizations that are just starting out. We Connect, very important. The government is starting to look at not just the government of Canada, but the city government, large corporations, as I said, are starting to dedicate portions of their budgets to purchasing goods and services from companies led by women and by diverse entrepreneurs and by Black entrepreneurs specifically. There are lots of opportunities to get certified by these organizations, you know, and you can be certified as a woman-led business, you can be certified as a Black-led business, and that will qualify you to provide services to some of these big leading companies. Again, one of the things that we've observed is companies and governments are saying, we have this money, we want to buy your products, but a lot of women entrepreneurs, and especially Black women entrepreneurs, don't actually know the unspoken rules in terms of how to do business with government or how to do business with some of these large corporations. That's another area we're trying to build capacity. And, you know, there's just at the provincial level, lots of funding, chambers of commerce, lots of COVID relief and specialized funding. And of course, there's the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, which Nadine already mentioned. Federal economic development agencies, you know, these are normally organizations that are going to provide larger amounts of money rather than smaller amounts of money. But it's important to keep them on your radar. The National Research Council of Canada, again, they have a bias, I would argue, towards tech companies, but still opportunities, and they have advisors who will help you navigate government services. The province has programs that are available and has announced recent supports for small businesses, particularly again through to help with COVID relief. City of Toronto has more money, and I already mentioned that EDC, which is the Export Development Corporation of Canada, will provide funds to help organizations get ready to grow. Innovation Canada, I'm mad at right now, but they actually have a tool online that is you can go into, and you can actually, you know, say, I am looking for funding, and then you answer some questions about the nature of your business, and it will help guide you towards the Government of Canada services that are available. It's easy. It's innovation.ca. Lots of services there. So that's, you know, like super, super high level of kind of the range of stuff that's out there. And I think BPPA is hugely committed and has invested a ton of effort and time to try to unlock some of these resources, and more importantly, to help people navigate access. So what you need is you need to know, what is your financial model? What is your cash flow? How much money do you need? What do you need it for? And what's it going to, what are the results that are going to be produced? And you have to be able to answer some of those questions in some detail as part of your business plan in order to unlock some of these resources. And Jules and Leah have both asked about access to resources, and we can provide the links. A lot of them are already on the wec.ca website, and I know Nadine has lots of them as well. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Wendy. It's always such a pleasure having you on. You are a wealth of knowledge, and you're well connected to all the resources. And do not hesitate, ladies, Wendy will share the deck. And, you know, I think the thing about resources is that it is available. There is money, there's opportunities available, but we have to, you know, get to it. We have to take that first leap of faith to go to the websites and search and get it. You know, find a day. It's part of the investing in ourselves. Find a day and let that be your resource day. You know, and you just go online and you find all the things, and then you prepare. They say there's no such thing as luck. It's preparation meets opportunity. And one of the things in the resources, in terms of readiness, you do have to be ready. So when you talked about registering her business and what that means, we have to register our business. We have to prepare the financial statements. We have to get the business plan done, because part of those resources, I don't know any resources, maybe you can let me know, Wendy, where you wouldn't need a business plan. There are, I mean, if you're looking to grow your business in a serious way, that's sort of the next step. Because even when we did the Rise Up pitch competition, the women did have to have a business plan and a financial piece to it. And so we have to formalize our businesses, and finding the resources, but also following all the requirements for our business so we can get the funding and the help is a part of that. So Uju, I'll turn it back over to you. And if there's any questions, we will take them now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. Sometimes I feel like I should just come to your living room and just sit down with you while I download all this knowledge from you. But thank you for taking our time to share all this amazing resource. It was quite a lot of very deep insight that are very useful to us. And a lot of people are asking in the chat for the document. It will be shared via the WhatsApp group and also via email to everyone. So don't worry, you would all get it. And then I have a question here that came to me about accelerator groups. And that is, at what point would you advise a startup to be a part of an accelerator program? And by startup, she's referring to, she hasn't yet started. It's still an idea and she's still writing business plans. So at what point would you advise it at all? And if you would, at what point should they get in?
Look, you can join an accelerator and incubator at any stage. They have them at various different levels. You know, the one we work with at Scatting Court is specifically targeting newcomer and refugee and low-income women. It's funded through the government of Ontario. These are people who don't speak English, who have just arrived, and we're using it in part to help them develop language skills, financial literacy, and learn how to navigate the environment in Canada. So, you know, you have those programs. Then you have programs like the Digital Media Zone and the Black Entrepreneurship Fund at the Digital Media Zone. If you have anything that's remotely tech related, that becomes an opportunity. But there's also the Fashion Zone at Ryerson, which is focused on people who are working specifically on you know, fashion, jewelry, stuff like that. You've got Foodpreneur, which is, I'm a big fan of Janice's, and I'm hoping she's getting government funding. Her whole thing is food products and how to help people get to market and so on. Of course, there's the stuff BPPA does, which I consider to be an accelerator and incubator. So really, it just depends at what stage you're at, what sector you're in, and specifically what you need access to. But a lot of people find accelerator and incubator experiences valuable. On the other hand, a lot of them are built for boys and are not very welcoming for women, and particularly for Black women. So some of that you have to navigate. I mean, the CASA Foundation has an incubator accelerator that is particularly targeting African women and so on. So there are a lot of these resources out there, and depending on where you are on your journey, like some will take you when you've just got a concept, right? And you have to be very careful about the terms. Some will take you and expect you to give them money. Some will take you and expect you to give them a share of your profits. Some will take you and not charge you anything because they've got government funding and mandates to support certain numbers of certain people. Age, unfortunately, is a factor. And one of the things, you know, as someone who is old enough to be Nadine's mother, there's a lot of, but I'm nowhere near as nice as her mom. There's a lot of challenges if you're, you know, over the age of 30 or 35. The options are more limited, and we're trying to fight that because a lot of women go into entrepreneurship as a second career or while they're raising their families or whatever. And a lot of the ecosystem, in addition to be biased against women and racialized people and Black people in particular and so on, it's also biased against older people because it's, you know, Silicon Valley is for the kids. So, you know, I think the key thing is being really clear about where you are in your process and what you need, and asking lots and lots and lots of questions and asking people for advice and guidance. And I'm putting the Ask Give platform link in the chat, and I would encourage all of you to check it out and see if you can make friends.
Amazing, thank you. I'm definitely checking it out. We have a question, and I think Giselle has a hand raised. You can go ahead and ask.
Thank you very much, Uju. Thank you, BBPA. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Wendy, for taking my question. You had mentioned something earlier, Wendy. You said something that really piqued my interest. You said if you have $2,500, you can hire a student for a number of months, and that $2,500 can turn to $10,000. So I'm just wondering, what does that mean? How does that happen? If you can briefly explain that to me. Thank you very much.
And again, I can, you know, Nadine and Uju and Francis will have to chase me to provide all the links, but there's something called the Student Work Placement Program funded by the federal government, and it will provide subsidies of up to 75% of the wages associated with hiring a student, if that student is a woman in tech, a racialized student, an Indigenous student, or a student with disability. So essentially how that would work is you would hire the student, you would pay the student, and then you would get reimbursed $7,500. Another reason for having a good relationship with your banker. And in my experience, and I say this, you know, the Diversity Institute now has 100 full-time staff, and it was about 2010, maybe 10 years ago, I got $15,000. And with $15,000, I hired someone for 4 months. And the person I hired for 4 months did nothing but write proposals because she wanted to keep her job. So she raised enough money to keep herself employed. And now we have about $30 million over the next 5 years to support the work and the staff that we do. And so sometimes you have to spend money to make money. And I think that a lot of women's businesses, you know, women, and Nadine's the worst offender, women try to do everything. And sometimes you have to just stop and invest in hiring other people to do parts of what you do, so you can do the high value stuff and have others do the other work. And in my experience, when it comes to social media, building a website, setting up your books, you know, lots of those kinds of activities, young people, especially students, especially business students, but not exclusively, can be an amazing investment because it frees up your time to do the high value stuff rather than running around doing the transactional work that a lot of us get sucked into. I mean, I am currently the proofreader for 100 people, so I am like the worst example of this, but figuring out ways to inexpensively bring on more staff and more support could be a really good strategy. And one of the things we're pushing for, I'll let you know if we're successful, is encouraging some of the big rich corporations to actually fund the students and then give them to the SMEs that they say that they're trying to support. So we're trying to do some of that work as well. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does, thoroughly. Thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you. Do we have any other question? You can just unmute yourself and ask. But I'm just going to check in the chat to see if we have any other question.
I do want to make a few points. You know, one of the things we have to do, we as women, as Black women, we've got to get over the money thing. We really do. Because in order to make money, you have to invest. You have to have skin in the game, I say. I remember I told you in my story, I was 21 years old and I paid $680, which was all the money I had in my bank account to take the Dale Carnegie course. But it was profound in changing my life and building my confidence. I took another course at the time, it was $1,800. Back then they called it the Forum. It was called the Communications course. $1,800, and I think I was 20 years old. I took that course. We have to invest in ourselves. We have to have skin in the game, because when you invest in yourself, you set a standard, you set a value, you set a worth, and other people will see that, believe in it, and invest in it as well. So the language, the vernacular that we don't have enough money, all of that out the door. Okay, whatever it is, we have to invest in ourselves. And, you know, to Wendy's point about no won't kill you. And you know what? Whenever someone says no, it just means you're talking to me. Because if you can't tell me no, you're not talking to me. So if you're telling me no, we're having a conversation. And as long as we're talking, I can get you to another point of view. So we can pivot that no into a maybe and into a yes. And it does happen. And last, Uju, you mentioned that it would be great to sit around Wendy's living room and we could all hear the jewels. And so, Fran, this is where I'm going to need your approval. I've always had a vision because, you know, I've got lots of ideas. It's kind of who I am. My mother always says, Nadine, I don't know what God's going to do with you because you want too much. And so I have always had this plan ever since I saw Oprah do it, that we would have all these women. And I want to have a suite at the Four Seasons. Okay, so a suite at the Four Seasons is not cheap. Wendy, we're going to have to start raising some money. Okay. And I would love to invite 20 women and Wendy overnight. Maybe it's a weekend of the Four Seasons. So Fran, I'm planting the seeds. Wendy, wouldn't that be awesome to have 20 boss women overnight at the Four Seasons, and we just talk? We have a book. I can see it now. I can see the brand of all the pink books, and we have our books and pens, our moleskins, of course, and we're all planning and setting, like with the resources and all of these things. See, our Cara gal Claudia has put a heart up to say yes. This is what we want. We want 20 women to go to the Four Seasons in a fantastic suite. I think they accommodate 20 people, and we're going to weekend there, and we're going to plan. We're going to take it up. That's what I want. So Fran, make it happen, please.
I feel like Fran is going to kidnap you one day and just lock you up somewhere. But I think that would be incredibly great. And I'm also going to add, at the risk of being stoned through my screen, that it would be paid for. You know, like you said, you have to put skin in the game. So if it was like a ticket or something, and people would buy, just so that sense of investing in their business, investing in development of themselves too. So I'm backing Nadine up, Fran. So if you're coming for Nadine, you're coming for me too.
I just want to make a suggestion. I would rather go to Niagara Falls than the Four Seasons, and it would be more affordable.
Okay, absolutely, yes.
One of those rooms overlooking the falls.
Yes.
Ooh, I love it.
I'm in for the pivot, Wendy. So yes, I'm in for the pivot, Fran and Wendy. Absolutely.
Yes. Fran, this session is being recorded, so we're not going to forget.
And I love you all dearly, all three of you. What can I say? That's all. I'm just, Wendy, you know I love you. So I can't do anything to you or to Uju.
Yes, say yes, say yes, yes.
We're going to stop planning that. Okay, I have one more question, and or we can take two more, and we would let Wendy go. And this question is around, and I know you mentioned some of these accelerator programs have, the boys in it. And this question is around the other platforms that you mentioned and we saw in the document. How are we not sure that this systemic barriers still exist, and how do we navigate it when we approach these tables?
I think, look, I'm the last person to minimize the realities of sexism and racism, and especially anti-Black racism. The stories that we heard frankly with the BMO competition from women who identified as African, Black, and Caribbean, as well as with the Rise Up competition, were astonishing. And it's interesting because we do a lot of work with Indigenous women as well, and the experiences of trauma, of violence, of racism, of negative experiences, I would never want to minimize. And I know, one of the things Nadine and I have talked about is the need for what I would call trauma-informed approaches that recognize that a lot of women, and especially Black women and Indigenous women and refugee women, are coming to the table with experiences that, middle-class women from Forest Hill cannot imagine. And so, at every level, there is anti-Black racism and there is sexism, and there's no question that we have to combat those things. At the same time, we see shining examples of success, like Ms. Nadine Spencer, who, in spite of all those barriers, have found ways to get over, around, through, whatever, to keep going. And while, it reminds me, I don't know if you know Ann Richards, she was the governor of Texas, I think, Democratic governor of Texas. And she said, Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, backwards and in high heels. And I think that's true of women entrepreneurs generally. And I think Black women entrepreneurs are doing it backwards, in high heels, on one leg, because, the barriers are just that more complex. However, I think, and, call me naive, call me unduly optimistic, I think with the right supports in place, we can ensure that women have a fighting chance, including Black women. And so that's the kind of stuff we're looking at, like So we understand applying for grants is complicated and intimidating if you haven't done it before. Okay, that's a barrier. How are we going to overcome that barrier? One of the things we do is we tell the government their processes are stupid. But the other thing we do is we create workshops where women are going to write their applications, and we're going to get students to help them write their applications. So that's kind of the way my mind works, is we have to understand and recognize what the barriers are, and then we work to break those barriers down. And at the same time, we work to help people overcome them, because they're not in your head. The evidence is so clear, so very clear, but we still can't give up. And I think that, you know, you need a kind of grit and tenacity and willingness to just keep pushing along and making sure that you have the supports in place and the network and the coaches and the mentors to help you do it.
Thank you. That's great, Wendy. Thank you. Excellent. I think we'll take one more question, right, Uju?
Oh, I was speaking. I didn't know I was muted. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy. I will take one more question and we'll let you go, because we don't want to keep you too late so we can start planning for Boss Women Retreat. And I can see more hands raised. Okay. So we'll take a few questions. Please unmute yourself.
Hi there, did you say Afui?
Afui, yes.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Sanaj Marie, the founder of Afui Group School. We have been around for 8 years, where I have created an African dance and drum school from scratch. However, I do not market it or structure it as just a dance school. Our mission is to empower, inspire, and educate young people through African arts and culture so that they can become a new generation of leaders. Now, my son is in the background, sorry. I have been told many times that our organization is a social purpose organization and social enterprise. However, I am not sure, you know, what a social enterprise is. Yes, I am grateful for the information about social finance. However, when it comes to restructuring my school, you know, in terms of the process of how do I make it a social enterprise on paper through a business plan. I've been told I can have a charity and a business portion of the school. Where do I go to really learn more about how to structure the school that way?
I think those are really good questions, and kind of outside of my area of expertise, other than to say social enterprises can be for-profit with social goals, or they can be nonprofits, or they can be charities, or they can be what are called B Corps. And, you know, one place to get support if you're going that route is the Center for Social Innovation, CSI, and they have a number of if you think about incubators, it's an incubator for social enterprise. I believe that Mars Innovation has resources specifically aimed at social enterprises, and even at Ryerson, we have something called the Social Venture Zone, which is aimed at helping people navigate some of these issues. So thank you for the question. And I think, you know, there are increasingly programs that are targeting organizations like yours. SheEO would be one of them.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that information. I appreciate it.
Awesome, thank you. And I think to reiterate what Wendy said, you can also go on the WEC platform where you can also ask, and information, you can be directed to even additional resources depending on what your needs are. And so we've come to the end of today's session. Thank you so much, Wendy. I feel like we should bring up balloons and and chocolate and just share with everyone, just because this has been so phenomenal and impactful. When I was thinking about this session, I really wanted everyone to go home with a portfolio of resources where they can tangibly go and actually find answers to questions. And I feel like that's what we've done today, especially with, the document you shared, and also the information that Nadine shared earlier. For everyone asking, I will share the document as well, just so that you can see all the organizations and resources that was shared in it, and you can access them. Wendy also shared her contact, so you can reach out to her. You can reach out to WEC as well, and also share, ask questions there, depending on your needs. So thank you, Wendy. I feel like we can't say thank you enough. And thank you as well, Nadine, for being such a phenomenal leader. But before we go, we want to answer a question around BBPA membership. And this is something that has come on our group. And I think Nadine or Fran, we can just talk about, sorry, I'm getting some feedback. We talk about the difference in the membership, because that's what we want to, a few of the women want to understand what are the differences in the BBPA membership.
Yeah, we have, I think basically everyone here should sign up at least for a professional membership. It's $150. We do have the corporate membership, which is $300. And there's just various tiers of access that you get. I think with the professional membership, you get access to all the BBP programs like this and others, and you get invited to special events. With the Level Up membership, which is the corporate membership, I think that one's $500. If you're a nonprofit, it's $300. And then for that, you get more exposure. So mention in our newsletter, on social media, a feature also in our newsletter, and then you get access to opportunities that we've been actually giving to you boss women, which if there's something that we are looking for a speaker or one of our partners, you get access to that. I remembered when we had one of the artists come in, they gave special passes to our members. And so you get those special passes as well. And then we're continuing to build those loyalty rewards and those different benefits for members. So you stay tuned and look on the site. There's more of that. But I think there's a gym membership as well. You get a discount with some of our different partners and so forth.
Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to play a little video for us before we sign out today. And of course, we'll play our music, which has been a signature. Okay.
Your business has a value. Think about the challenges that we have and why your product or service is going to fill that. No matter how great the product is, it has to be marketed. Understand your business plan. The business plan is your roadmap. Success does leave clues. And if you pick up on those clues, you too can ascend in that same path. In the entrepreneur's journey, it's cyclical. We're going to have days where it's up and days where it's down. You will shine. We will shine.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely evening while I call on Beyonce to serenade you out of our Boss Women program.
And thank you very much again to our partner, Wendy and WEC. Thank you so very much. Wendy had something to say. Go ahead. Go ahead, Wendy.
Remember what Beyonce said. I'm not bossy. I'm the boss.
That's a great note to end on. Absolutely. We're not bossy. We're the boss. Thank you very much.
And tomorrow's Ask a Professional is the business of branding.
Oh, fantastic. That's at noon. What time is it, Fran? It's at noon?
12 to 1.
Yeah, you'll all get the information in your inboxes, but do join us 12 to 1. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.